To this day, there's no ship commander I would rather put my trust in than one trained by the United Nations. Trust me, I'm one of them. To be an executive officer or commander of a warship in the United Nations, you are obligated to undergo what is rather boringly named the Spacecraft Command Course, but the course is more commonly known as Perisher, a rather large clue as to the traditions and origins of the United Nations Space Fleet. Those who undergo Perisher are put under extreme conditions, first in the simulator and then in command of a real warship in wartime conditions. The result is the finest commanders you could possibly have. My course, just 71% of participants passed. That may sound like a lot, but understand that the punishment for failing is to be ejected from the combat arms of the Navy entirely, sentenced to run ships for the Army, never to see the insides of a stellar Navy warship as anything other than a passenger again. I know they have decent success as ship crews to the Postal Service or the Sirius Initiative, but both will send their potential officers to Perisher too. No retries, no partial fail, just a solid line between life and death for your career. Officially, since we are assessed in front of actual crews, it would be impossible to command any confidence from your peers in the event of failure, and therefore this is not a punishment, but a reflection of reality. But we all know the truth. The point is to stop the uncommitted, the incapable, the untalented from attempting it. To fail is to put one's career on the line entirely, and so you would only dare run the gauntlet if you are determined and capable. Very few who want an officer background for politics would ever dare do so in the Navy. Perisher's origins are fairly obvious given the name. The Contact War and the Second Hecatian War forced humanity as a species to grapple suddenly with the demands of spaceborne warfare, despite a total dearth of experience. Confined spaces with no escape, utterly dependent on what your ship could bring and nothing more. It was no surprise the first choice for crews to battle in this new environment looked below the waves. It also helped, of course, that attack submarines were largely redundant in this new war, their crews certainly not delivering their full potential. So the first crews were drawn from these submarines, courses hastily thrown together to retrain them from sailing under the sea to fighting amongst the stars. As things stabilized and a more substantial fleet began to emerge, proper courses were drawn up, based on the accumulating experience of these early forays into space combat. The name Perisher was drawn as a homage to a British submarine training program, largely in honor of the country's status as the site of the Contact War, but also due to similarities in course structure. What did this deliver? A fledgling space fleet that punched far above its weight during the Second Hecatian War, delivering numerous impressive victories that put significant pressure upon the Hecatian Stellar Imperium and directly contributed to its collapse. Then, post-war, its graduates became its newest teachers, amidst a rapid expansion to try and make the United Nations a credible spacefaring power. I can't tell you what each Perisher is like, partially because it changes slightly from year to year, and partially because I'm just not allowed to give too many details. What I can give you is the official line, and a few facts you can understand on your own. Like that what I did was harder than anything I've ever done on active duty, and I've done underway replenishment and been in combat. Make of that what you will. We start with 2 months in simulators, constantly drilling again and again, getting used to the experience of commanding warships, operating individually or as part of fleets, doing search and rescue or fighting battles of apocalyptic scale in the heart of the solar system. Learning, learning, learning. Then we go out into the real world, in training ships, and learn some more, in much the same way. Then we are split into smaller groups and sent back to the simulators to work together, under the view of a single instructor. And then we go out in real ships, and it gets so much worse. Real warships, with real crews, let me be very clear on that. As good as the simulators are, and they're damn good, there is just something impossible to quantify about the experience of being in a real warship ready to actually fight. To know you are commanding a vessel that truly can, and likely has, fired shots in anger. Again, I cannot say what I personally faced. What I can point out is that there have been a few news stories about what sort of things the instructors throw at you. Like the story a few years ago, where one of the crew was an amateur actor and was ordered by the instructor to pretend to have a breakdown, barricading himself into a room with a nuclear warhead until he was successfully negotiated out by one member of the team. Or the time a team was told, midway through the exercise, that the exercise was cancelled. It was not, because the Tralaxians had declared war and were bearing down on the solar system. It was not, requiring they be sent to fight. My understanding is the lawsuit over that one was quickly dropped. It is grueling, brutal, frankly. Week after week of tough decision-making does that to a person, grinds them down until their ability shows through. You bend, or you break. A few break. The committed ones bend. You can make mistakes. Big ones. I make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. It would be absurd to punish someone for such a reality. No, what deserves a punishment is when a candidate cannot learn from a mistake, cannot take steps to rectify or minimize the damage. That is what gets you punished. Someone who cannot learn from mistakes is someone who has a personality flaw that makes them unsuitable for command. You may think this is all too harsh, too excessive, but understand that it is vital. Space warfare rewards careful thinking, the ability to command without losing your head, to juggle 1,000 different plates, to adapt and improvise. The most common reason to fail is losing situational awareness, fixating on one aspect, and failing to appreciate the broader picture until you find an entire Torrentiomos squadron has managed to catch you. It may not be much of a problem in your real career, but then the Hull incident would not have been thought to happen to that officer's career, and it did. And I bet she would not have been able to get the UNV Hull out alive without their perisher training. The skills perisher identifies, and the ones it builds in you, those will be vital to you delivering the most you can out of your career. What does the United Nations get out the other end of perisher? The very best, either ones that started out the cream of the crop, or those that were successfully molded into being one. The program set me on a path that ended up here, in charge of the UNV Einjalut, a first-of-its-class battleship. It set my classmates on long and storied careers. It is a program so successful that the Commonwealth sends some of its best and brightest to the course. It is a program that has delivered, time and again. Perisher is the United Nations commitment to ensure that those in charge of its spaceships are as high quality as the ships, missiles and guns they command. The United Nations has placed a truly terrifying amount of faith in people like me, and every perisher, every anti-piracy patrol, every fleet action demonstrates how well placed that faith is.